Welcome back, guys. It's another part 2 on the spot where I answer the questions that you guys have sent me. Resuming, next question comes to us from Rayarn11. He says, OTS, how is Hank? Actually, he said, how's Hank, but I expanded on it. How is Hank? Hank is actually fine. Hank's right here. Hank's doing pretty good, I guess. I don't really talk to him very much because then again, he is a knife. But yeah, Hank is actually doing fairly well. Rosalita, on the other hand, well, that's questionable. We still got contract negotiations underway. I will certainly bore you guys with that. Next question comes to us from Chris Wolf. OTS, what's your favorite? What your favorite toy you review? Favorite toy that I've reviewed, I would say, is probably still DC Superheroes Clayface. And I know I say that for everything, but he's just so well detailed. Definitely, I'm going to definitely do a throwback on him, that's for sure. Next question comes to us from Kane Yo-Yo619. OTS, Spot, will you ever show your face? Not counting the times I saw it from a reflection. Next question comes to us from Rob's Rogues. OTS, back in 2009's On the Spot. OTS, Part 1, you made mention that you didn't think the Lizard would be a strong enough villain all by himself in the next Spider-Man movie. Did I actually say that? Look at this guy. Look at this guy paying attention and following Spot, seeing what he's doing. It says, now that we've actually seen it actually happen, has your thought changed? You know, I have to say, I still don't think Lizard was a smart choice. I do, and I don't. I think that Lizard was not a strong villain to have in Spider-Man, that he just came across as really generic. A really generic CG villain. And again, he looked like the Goombas from Mario Brothers, the Mario Brothers movie. But looking at it now, and I've had some time to think about it, looking at it now, it's probably one of the better routes to go with. Because I find the problem is, if you bring in a villain that is too well fleshed out, like they did with Dr. Octopus. Like, I don't think Dr. Octopus could have worked well in the first Spider-Man movie, because they established him so well that you would have had to have already established Spider-Man to bring in a well-established villain. I think, now, it depends, right? Like, I think Joker worked well in the '89 Batman movie as the first villain because it's the big, you know, you have the big villain, the big hero, and they meet as the first movie. I find now, though, looking at movies, I find the formula seems to almost work better when you have a less established or a less mainstream villain as the first villain, because then you can spend a lot more effort working on establishing the origin of the character and everything else. That it works better. Like, I'm glad that they didn't do Green Goblin in the first Amazing Spider-Man, because I think it would have just been too much. And I think, I'm using think a lot, I think Lizard was good as you needed a villain that was just a primal force of nature, something, so that it was just Spider-Man fighting this villain. Whereas I think if you incorporated the idea of having a well-established character in the first Spider-Man movie, first Amazing Spider-Man, I think it would have taken away from developing Spider-Man, because you would have had to try to quickly establish two strong characters. Plus, they tied in Lizard to the origin of Spider-Man, so it kind of connected to one another. They didn't have to work too hard at it. I think it was also a good idea. It seems to me like the new trend is it's best to establish superhero movies where the villain is on par with the hero, where they either have connected origins and then they can work, you can see how, you know, one abuses that said story, one can, you know, grow from it. So Lizard, I think, being in Amazing Spider-Man worked well now that I look back on it, because you had two characters that were kind of not tightly knit, not like it was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, but you at least had two characters that were close enough at their starting point, and then they just branched off. So you had Lizard, Spider-Man, and then they met back. To have a villain that was like Sandman or some larger character that had his own story, I think one would have to be sacrificed, you know. So you'd either have a really hollowed villain character backstory, and you'd have a really hollowed superhero story because you were trying to do too much all at once. And I think that's also why Batman Begins works really well too, because Scarecrow is not necessarily the main character. He is basically the catalyst, or he is what drives the story. Scarecrow is there simply to drive the plot. I don't think Scarecrow is really intended as a main villain, as he is just someone that drives the plot to the initial reveal of Ra's al Ghul to go back, that then harks back to Batman's origin. I think that formula worked, and then to have had Joker, if he had ever been in the Nolan Universe first movie, I think it would have been more disastrous. I think you really need to establish the character first, the hero, and then you can say, okay, here is the villain, here's the hero, here comes the sequel. Now in the sequel, he has to take on a baddie, like a big main villain. I think it works better that way. So looking at it now, I think Lizard was a good choice for a Spider-Man movie. You would have had to have had somebody that is there to drive plot. I think I pretty much summed it up right there. You need a villain in the first movies to drive the plot rather than drive the villain. And if you look at it, in most cases, all the successful movies of recent year, of all the hero movies, all have done well when the villain is there to establish the plot, not establish the character. If you look at the first Iron Man movie had Ironmonger, which was basically a spin-off plot point from Iron Man's origin story. You know, Thor, very similar, same concept. You had Loki, but Loki was there not really as much as a villain as, again, more a plot device. He was there to establish the plot, the threat that Thor had. So I think that's a good formula for comic movies nowadays, is to have a character villain there for the first movie that drives the plot rather than drives the character itself. That's a long answer for a question. I apologize, Rob's Rogue, but again, thank you very much for your question. I certainly do appreciate it. Grimwolf100 next asks, OTS, memory test, what was your fifth on-the-spot question from On the Spot? I'm going to assume it was something from him, if he's asking me that. That's a very random question. I honestly don't know. I'm so sorry, I really don't know. Next, I'm sure he'll tell me, though. I'm sure he'll tell me. Next question comes to us from the Muppet Spot 2. What are your thoughts on Muppets? I still have to see the new Muppets movie. I still haven't seen it. The one by Jason Segel? I don't know his last name. I used to love the Muppet Show when I was younger. Muppets Tonight, I didn't like. I just don't like the new Muppets. I like the old Muppets. And I like, Muppets Take Manhattan, The Great Muppet Caper, all those. When you start getting to the newer Muppet movies like Muppets in Space, Muppet Treasure Island, especially Muppet Christmas Carol, I did not like Muppet Christmas Carol. But like the old school Muppets, totally love it. I have the Muppet Show on DVD. I really should watch that. It's been a while since I've seen that. I want to watch the episode with like C-3PO and all that. Next question comes to us from Melissa Schuler. OTS, how many candy spots did you do counting Halloween? It's tough to say because when I do reviews, when I shoot videos, I shoot a lot of them. Not maybe in one sitting, but I do shoot a lot of them that there's a lot on my computer. Like I have a lot of videos I haven't even uploaded yet. There's a lot of candy spots that still haven't made it online, really aside from other figure reviews too. So I'm going to say of the ones I've uploaded, there might be about 20, but certainly of the ones that I have to still upload, there's a lot more. There's a lot more. Next question comes to us from GAS Productions 2000. What do you really look like? I look like a camera with No, I don't. I'm not going to give some jerk answer. I kid you not, all the time I get, hey, has anyone ever told you you look like Dane Cook? I went to HMV, I don't know, last month, something like that. And when I was at the checkout, the girl says, you must get this like all the time, but you must get that people tell you you look like Dane Cook. And I said, yes, yeah, I get that a lot. I used to get people say that I looked like Josh Lucas from Reviews on the Run? Yeah, basically, mostly Dane Cook. Someone once told me I also look like, what's his name? Paul, the guy from I Love You Man. What was his name? I draw a blank. I don't know why I draw a blank. That's one of my favorite comedians, but for some reason, I don't remember his name. Anyways, mostly Dane Cook is usually what I get. Next question comes to us from the comic book fan. Why don't you do more horror movie figure reviews? I think I mentioned this before. The problem with doing horror movie figure reviews is the fact that for, I might have, say Jason figures come out from NECA and they release two figures, usually a battle damage and a regular version. There might be two of those figures, but at that same given point, DC Universe might release a wave of figures that has like 6 to 8 figures. So really, for every one horror movie figure I've collected or reviewed or haven't reviewed yet, there are probably 10 times that amount of superhero figures that I've collected or whatnot. So it's not so much that Spot just doesn't want to review horror movie figures. I love horror movie figures, but the problem is there's only so many that they've made. They haven't really made a lot of horror movie figures aside from, if you exclude like the NECA lines where like NECA did all the Hellraisers, like they did 3 waves and each wave had like 8 figures with a build figure piece. If you exclude those, like NECA only does, a horror movie figure from time to time. Mezco used to do the Cinema of Fear. They don't really do that anymore. So there's not really a lot of horror movie figures out there. There are obviously ones that I want to go back and pick up still, but I just haven't had a chance to pick up yet. And again, when I mentioned earlier, like there are so many reviews that I have shot. I kid you not, there's probably about 300 videos that I've shot that still have not made it to YouTube. And the hardest part for me is that I record it, and then if some new line comes out, I record that and then I might upload that first, while the other things end up getting backpedaled and backlogged. So Spot always tries to find a way to get all those older videos up there as well. Sometimes I know Spot puts a little too much out there, but Spot does try his best to try to get all the stuff out there. That pretty much wraps it up for this part. That question, by the way, came to us from the comic book fan. Certainly stick around, guys, though. There's still lots more in the way of On the Spot, where I resume answering questions that you guys have sent me. So stay tuned. So much more on the way.